Hey guys, it's me back back with the 7th chapter of Swords and Sorcerers by Swisskey. Now, the last chapter was really short, and if this one follows that chapter and is also really short, I might throw in the next chapter, so do expect that there might be a number change and from 7 to 8. I will probably also tell you that I'm switching chapters if I do decide to add in number 8 to this. But with that being disclosed, let's get into the chapters. Chapter 7, Hammers and Head Wounds. Summary. Pan is blinked into the light and into a world where he is a knight? What's going on here? Maybe a little one-sided royalty. Patent ex-Roman. Here, if you squint. Chapter text. The steel helmet hit the ground and rolled, kicking up dust with its impact. It rolled along the dirt ground, leaving an indent like a wheel in its wake before it finally settled, edging on its rim before settling. It sat there, sunlight gleaming off of the polished metal. Sunlight? Pan thought as his eyes followed the helmet's trail before looking back up. Everything around him has changed. Gone was the great storm chamber and the green-eyed knight and his blood-red abomination. Gone was the cold and heavy strangling air. Gone were the damp stones and crawling darkness. And instead, Patton was standing outside in crisp, clear air under golden sunlight, dry earth underneath his heels, and a breeze in the air. The surrounding areas were a true picturization hillside. His own presence clearly thumped down with heavy trial. His own presence clearly tampered down with a heavy trail. The glaring winds were were accompanied by the sound of rustling leaves, chirping birds, and cheers. Pan blinked once, then twice, trying to reconcile his surroundings, but only one thing commanded his attention at the moment his wits returned. Before him was another warrior, heavily clad in heavy plate armor, not in black, but steely blue-gray. He had stranged from the hit, heavily footfalls sent up clouds of dust from the packing earth beneath his boots. He struggled to rein his footing, and as he rounded again on Patton, the mole side's eyes widened. The helmet had been completely removed. His helmet had been completely removed. The blood was trickling from all over the right side of his face, from ear, mouth, under his blonde hair, a little lavish from where the helmet must have cut him in its departure. In one hand, this other knight held a shiny, heavy-looking broadsword, steel-clad fingers adjusting and retightening around the grip. In the other was a formidable steel shield that, in his current state, the warrior seemed to be having trouble lifting. He blinked, attempting and failing to focus on Patton as his eyes glazed over, legs trembling. to support his weight before, with a heavy clank, he fell to one knee, his sword fallen from his hand and to the ground, bouncing once before it was still. "Sir Everett!" a gruff, booming voice bellowed off to the other side, and Pan jumped, turning his head to see where it came from. Wherever he was a titan of a man, and he stood a mere 10 or 12 feet away. He easily topped out at about 6.5 feet tall, which with copper blonde hair tied back into a ponytail, with a long beard that hung down to the middle of his chest. His face was chiseled and rough, with a scar, great and small, over every inch of exposed skin, and his blue eyes, cold and fearsome as the northern winter, crossed across his broad shoulders, barley chest, and burrowed stomach. He wore a simple, heavily tunic that looked like it must have been taken into another bolt of rusty dark red orange wool to make, and a pin white gray sash from one shoulder to the opposite hip strapped to his back. The leather belt sash across his chest was a great sword, kicked in and burden, looked as if it had seen dozens, if not hundreds, of battles. Right now his eyes were cast upon the field was Patton and this other knight, as a crowd of younger and older, fresh faces as well as seasoned, armed men cheered beside and around him. His voice boomed again. "Sir Everett, do you yield?" The warrior Patton was facing turned to face the giant man, and Patton had to resist the urge to gag when he saw the half of the man's face was now covered in fresh red blood, dripping into the dirty dirt. He braced his shield into next to his leg and pushed, attempting to rise, but wobbled and staggered before crashing back down, earning jerks and laughter from a small crowd. Patton's heartbeat pulsed loudly in his ears as he watched, wondering whether this Sir Everett would actually give in. He muttered, his words cracking and defeated, as if trying to find his voice before calling out for all to hear. I yield." Cheers, laughs, and jeers rolled through the crowd at the announcement. The gathered men conversing between each other, chattering excitedly. The mountain of a man stepped forward, footfalls thundering as he loomed closer and closer, looking taller and taller like a great bear. Patton inaudibly gulped as the armed giant blocked out the sun, casting the moral side in shadow. The brute's head turned first to the fallen knight. "Sir Everett, do you need help?" A moment passed before the bonded warrior looked up, half his face completely ruined, but a smile on his lips. "No, sir, Captain. I'm Peachy." "Hello, Peachy," the Titan replied, a smile curling under his beard as he held out a hand. "I'm Splatter." Jesus. Pat's eyes widened at the obvious dad joke engaged between the two men. One watching each of their shoulders bounce with laughter. These are my people! Everett took the hand of this massive Captain Splinter and was pulled to his feet with a little effort, his armor shifting and squeaking as the plates clanged together. He appeared unsteady, legs trembling, but not seeming in danger of actually falling again. He turned his head to the side. He hawked back and spat and mixed blood and saliva into the dirt before his eyes returned to Patton. Well done out there, Sir Patton, he declared, and the mole aside felt his eyes grow wide at hearing his name off the stranger's lips. You definitely smashed my chances of defeating you. Did he just... Wait, Sir Patton? He thought, confusion running rampant through his mind, but after a moment of the two men staring at him, he replied, Thank you, you as well, Sir Everett. You're definitely ahead of the pack. The two shared a laugh, Everett squeaking in pain before Captain Splat turned to face the crowd of warriors. Their Joel's mutters came to a quick, if granulated halt, as a single smooth gesture from their captain's hands silenced them. Brothers of the Order, for a month's war games eternity, he babbled, I give you your champion. Patton felt a massive hand close around his wrist before his arm was thrusted into the air. Sir Patton Douglas, as a cheer erupted from the ensembled warriors, a wave of several emotions ran through Patton's minds. There was an overwhelming sense of confusion of having come from such darkness into the light and having no idea what was going on. There oddly was a sense of elation at finding himself without of anything else, an order of knights who delighted in his dad jokes. Finally, in the back of his mind, he was worried. Where was Roman? Where was Logan? Where was Virgil? The questions for him later, his mind tried to coax, soaking in the moment. They're cheering for you. Penn could not help the smile that crossed his face as he basked in the adulation, but with the advance of the last several minutes being to wear off, he felt heaviness all over his body. He looked down, he gasped, his eyes widening. Now that thing makes a bit more sense. More confusion rushed through Patton's mind as he realized he was clad from neck to toe in armor, all his own. Gored breast and back plates, palatines, covers, ram braces, gulags, cuirassier gears, everything in a deep teal with a steel sheen. As he shifted, he could feel more chainmail move against layers of leather and wool, padding against the unforgiving metal. Across his torso was much like the Titan who raised his arm, and over half of the others cheering him on was a gray, almost white sash racking down to the pin receiving pin resembling a silver sword before a gold sun. Most menacing of all, weighted down his other hand, was a war hammer, but prepared a bit less than a yard long. Its studded shaft wrapped in brown and dyed teal leather. At the business end of the weapon, it came to the nasty point. The steel hammer itself had a brutal flat face on one side and a wicked 5-inch spike on the other. This was a weapon made to kill knights. His stomach falling out at the very thought. Pine looked to his side past Captain Splatter to Sir Everett, who stood there, still dazed and wobbling from the strike that loosened his helmet. His hair was still matted with blood and caked itself all over half of his face. It was clear that somehow, in all the course of fighting, Patton or Sir Douglas might have struck him in the head with a deadly weapon, knocking him silly and taking his helmet clean off. Oh God, Patton thought, a chill running down his spine at the very notice. I could have killed him. Patton sat on the bed in his warm room, his backside sinking into the stark gray blanket atop the surprisingly comfortable mattress. Minutes ago, after gingerly placing his hammer and shield next to the door, he sat about shrinking off his armor with the help of a spirited young boy who introduced himself as Toby, his squire. Everything from the plates to his chain and leather came off, down to a simple, sweaty teal tunic a brown woolen breeches attaching from the anchor. It was comfortable and cool. Patton thanked Toby before sending him off and plopping down, his eyes cast starkly down to the floor as his shoulders slumped forward, the events of the last few hours running through his head. At the conclusion of the tournament, he, Captain Sparles, Sir Everett, and the full reunit of warriors among them had made a short trip back to the castle Dapperley. The eccentric home of the Order of the Fathers, or so he had overheard from the other brothers telling a potential recruit. Cheering on and landing Sir Patton Douglas as a champion, the other, slightly drunken brother compared him to the first of the father knights, and regaled the captive youth with a tale of their census storied history. The Order, as this group called themselves, was established hundreds of years ago when the father king, Kinder Depley, recruited the young, newly crowned king of Easter from certain death by Bridget's, fighting off the attackers and nursing the young king back to full health. Upon returning the king to the capital in perfect health, thanks to his healing arts, the father knight and his men were lounged as heroes by the people of Easter. In horror and recognition of his service, the king named Sir Kinder and the greatest warriors of the clandish protectors of the realm, establishing their order as ones to be respected by all under rule of law. By all under the rule of law. In addition, he charged them with questing around the country to help those in need, to protect the weak and innocent, to heal the sick, and give counsel whenever asked. As a knight of the order, apparently, this was what Patton's mission in the world was, and to be honest, it was a truly noble call. They had returned to Castle Dappery, and as it crested over the hillside, and the very sight of great fortresses had taken Patton's breath away, surrounded for miles on every side by farmland and rivers dedicated to feeding the kings of order. The high walls of the castle rose easily 35 feet into the air, composed of gray bricks, stone, and mortar. The watchtower is at either end of the wall rose even higher, and the kept with great spirals, the tower all its own rose higher still. From the walls hung yellow-gray banners embroidered with a yellow sun behind a darkened gray sword, the banner of the Order of the Fathers. Patton could hardly concentrate on a sort of words that were chiseled into the stone above the gate, reading Orodum Sle Patton Gumsam, which translate to I'm hungry. Hello, I'm Dad. In this great castle depicted to helping others in his own room where he could find solace, the moral side closed his eyes, only to immediately open them again when he saw those green eyes staring back. The green-eyed knight, Patton thought, shuddering at the image that was recalled behind his eyelids every time he blinked, and then I'm here. I'm a knight in some faraway mystical land, and I nearly killed someone. Letting out a rumbling sigh, the moral side fell back onto his bed, his legs dangling over the edge as the bed cradled him, soft enough for him to sink into, but firm enough that he could still shift himself around without too much hassle. In all honesty, it felt perfect. He'd have to commend Roman on making him think twice about the bed in his own room. But not here, but home. Roman, Patton mused to himself wistfully, with a touch of worry tugging at the back of his head. Where are you? The prince's easy smile worked his way into the father's mind. With his swooping purple hair and perfect pearly white teeth, his contrast appearing and singing, an overdramatic outburst that brought spice to Patton's life. A smile of his own graced the moral side's face as he reached up to pull off his thick glasses. Unchanged through the ordeals of the last couple hours, folding them and resting and resting them beside his head on the mattress, sinking in fraudulently, just as deep as he sank into the mattress. Patton risked closing his eyes once more, inwardly drearing what he would see. He let a content sigh as the image of Roman stuck around, his mere presence wandering off those leering eyes as he slept. As sleep took the moral night. Sir Patton? Patton's eyes opened, still heavy with sleep, and a jolt of panic ran through him as he did not recognize for a moment where he had woke up. But the flurry of confusion passed as the day came flooding back to him, followed by calm. He rubbed his eyes and grabbed his glasses, slipping them on and blinking until the room once again came back into focus. He threw a glance at the window, and it appeared the sun was beginning to set in the sky. Yes, he called out to the door, clearing his throat to shake the sleepy haze from his voice. Come in. The door creaked opened, and his squire, Toby, poked his head into the room. He was a young lad of 13 or 14, on the smaller end of the spectrum in height, with a short, unruly mop of shaggy black hair that fell like a curtain over perpetually grubby cheeks and hazel eyes. When he saw Patton was roused and awake, he bowed his head once in respect. Hey, kiddo, the father figure greeted, standing up from the bed to regard his visitor. The boy stepped into the room wearing a simple gray tunic, belted at his waist and embroidered with the order's coat of arms across his chest. Toby spoke. I've been sent to fetch you, my lord. The Lord Commander has required your presence. Patton followed the squire's words, looking at him over the rim of his glasses as he repeated, The Lord Commander. Yes, my lord, Toby repeated. You have been requested by name. Patton did his best to recall anything he might have heard about a Lord Commander from any of the other brothers, but all he had managed to glean was that he was the older man by the name of Leofric, and also known the word over as an expert swordsman. Aside from the man's main and agile battle prowess, nothing at all about him actually came to mind. Only the trip back from the hills earlier. The only talk about the Lord Commissioner himself was in passing. Well then, we best not keep the man in charge waiting. Right. Patton immediately started heading towards the door before a hidden grin broke across Toby's face and he began snickering. What is it? With all due respects, my lord, Toby spoke, clearing his throat to get the giggles out of his throat. Don't you believe you should, actually get dressed? Patton looked down at himself, still dressed in sweaty, now cool, and crusted tunic and breeches. Sheepishly, his eyes returned to Toby as he considered. You may be right. Another easy smile stretched across the squire's face as he stepped further into the room. I'll fetch your clothes I'll fetch you clothes for your audience, my lord. Thank you very much, Toby, Patton thanked before adding, and you don't have to keep calling me my lord either. You can just call me Patton. If you'll forgive me, my lord, but perhaps another night, Toby answered as he moved between the drawers of the bureau before turning it to Patton with a smile. Do you prefer Sir Tenuous or Sir Garion? It took Patton a moment for the joke to connect in his head, but once it did, he let out little peals of laughter. Another night. I get it. Toby moved around the room far more quickly than Patton would have, shifting through tunics and breeches and vests and belts before bringing the proper clothes to the bed and lying them clean across the top blanket, neat and tidy. Patton prepared to get dressed for his audience with the Lord Commander, but turned and stopped, seeing Toby as he waited dutifully at the foot of the bed. No way was he getting undressed in front of the young lad. Do you need anything, kiddo? Pat asked, unsure why he was waiting, an embarrassed blush spread across his cheeks. I thought that was my line, Toby quicked before a confused look spread across his own face. I'm your squire, Sir Patton. It's my job to assist you in whatever you need, cleaning your weapons and armor, attending to your quarters, and, well, you getting dressed as well. Surely you know this. Yes, Patton replied. But, I think I got it from here. Mind waiting outside. I'll call if I need any help. The squire paused for a moment before inclining his head. Of course, whatever you need, Sir Patton. With that, Toby left the room, his heels clicking on the stone floor and echoing so that Patton could hear that he did not go far. The mole knight turned towards his bed, looking at the marauder of different clothes laid out before him. A long, muted teal tunic, bordered with tan fur, sat on the bed, along with a cream-colored undertunic, dark brown breeches, a brass ring, brown leather belt and boots, his pinned white-gray sash, and with a blush that could only be termed as a coolly sewn underwear. I can do this. Pan let out a sigh as he pulled off his shirt, letting it fall to the floor. He picked up the off-white shirt and walked around the room, about to put on his shirt before he passed the mirror. He jumped, almost not recognizing his reflection before he turned to it, taking a closer look. In a word, Patton actually looked kind of hot. Normally, if he were shirtless before, the fact that he enjoyed sweets in a little more than most tended to show a little extra to his tummy and arms and veritable dad bod, as Roman referred to it once. Now, though, it would appear that Sir doubtless might have been conditioned to only wear heavy armor from an early age. Patton now saw a very well-defined chest and muscular arms, where he once had seen pasty, pumpless, and, well, his abdominal muscles were not cut into his stomach. The mole side could easily see that the body he now had was one that was built for power. He inwardly chuckled at the compression that ran through his mind at the sight of his blurry body of his blurry body and thick, unchanged glasses. Burly body and thick, unchanged glasses. Oh, that'd be an amazing sight. Clark Kent, eat your heart out, he thought, as he shamelessly indulged in a little flex for his own benefit. Ha! That's amazing. His moment of variety, he proceeded to throw on his shirt, then the over tunic, the small cloths, breeches, and boots, leaving his sash on the bed as he attempted to wrap the ring belt around his body and tie it in place. How did it go before? Pan asked himself, growing increasingly frustrated. For the 5th time, the leather strap undid itself and flopped onto his ankles. He closed his eyes, embarrassed at the words that called forth from his mouth. Toby, you still there, kiddo? Of course, Sir Patton, the squire called back from outside. Do you need help? Nodding at the closed door, Patton replied, I'd certainly be appreciative. In an instant, the door opened and Toby swept back in. Within seconds, he threaded the belt through the brass ring and tied it off, Pan doing his best to pay close attention so he could mimic the process in the future. The knight leaned down as his squire threw the sash over his head and one arm, expertly pinning it on the mole side's shoulder before stepping back. Is there anything else? The boy asked eagerly, eager and alert as ever. Pan thought for a moment, realizing very quickly that he actually had no idea where he was going, and answered, Yes, actually. How would you like to accompany me to the Lord Commander's chamber? The boy's eyes went wide at the question. The knight furrowed his brow. There's a problem, bud? No, there's no problem, sir, he responded, obviously nervous as he continued. It's just that you know that squires are meant to do our duties, be seen and not heard, and ever, well, not to be seen if we can help it. To accompany a knight to an audience, especially of the Lord Commander of all people, well, it's unheard of. Silence pervaded the room before Toby inclined his head once more. With all due respects, of course. Pan could feel nothing but sympathy for the boy. He barely knew anything about Toby himself, save that he was assigned to be his squire when he, or Sir Douglas, had risen to kinghood, and that he was fairly new to the job on the whole, though, however, this boy were being treated as nothing but a servant when they actually did all the hard manual labor actually frustrated Patton a bit. A flare of anger rising in his heart, the boy had been nothing but helpful and respectful today, attending to every need that Patton had. I don't want to be another person to treat this boy like that, like trash. Patton thought as he laid a comforting hand on Toby's shoulder, looking him in the eyes. Well, you've heard of it. Toby's eyes widened again, a spark of admiration in his eyes that warmed the father figure's heart. With a pat, the knight smiled and gave an order. Lead the way, kiddo. Okay, so I decided, since this is a god-awful long thing already, I'm going to split this chapter into 2 parts. So this is part 1 of 2 of, what chapter am I on? Chapter 7. Hopefully you guys have a nice day, and I will see you when the next part comes out. Bye!